so much. Yes, I'm glad you enjoyed the film. It's a labor of love. It took a while to get made because I wanted to be authentic to the story of Los Angeles. Growing up as an Angelino, as an Armenian American, I grew up in the 80s and 90s when LA was a very different time. It was the era of Atari and NWA and Tupac and Rodney King. So, I grew up very heavily involved in school life and hip hop music and DJs, and there was a lot of violence that came with that territory, fortunately. Even though I was a fairly good student, I went to USC Film School. I always wanted to tell the stories of the streets because all my favorite filmmakers like Martin Scorsese and Spike Lee, they were representing New York in a way that I felt like I already knew New York from their movies. But I couldn't say the same about LA. LA was difficult to pin down cinematically. People come to LA to make movies about everywhere else but LA. And when I was at USC Film School, I made a vow I would go back to the streets because I feel like the streets is where history is born. And the street is where the great music and the art comes from. Whether it's the Beat Generation, the Harlem Renaissance, whether it's rock and roll in England or whether it's hip hop, the street gives you the lifeblood of history. And there's so much ferment in the streets. And honestly, it dealt with losing so many friends who were very smart, intelligent, college bound to gun violence. And that really bothered me. And I felt like I had a duty as I grew up to tell these stories in a way that explored these stupid themes of rights of violence that for boys to become men. And so there was an incident that happened when I was at USC Film School. I was 19 or 20 at the time. And I was in downtown LA where I am now at the $1 Million Theater, where tonight's the last night of the screenings. And I have a Q&A in 40 minutes. So I think we'll have a good talk. But basically, I was getting ready to shoot a scene. I was a cinematographer, and it was the era of the DV cam. It was 1998, and I was getting ready to line up the shot. And this young boy who was probably 14, maximum 15, with pimples on his face, just rolled up on me on his bicycle, looked at me, and then he pulled out what looked like a 25 pistol, a 25 millimeter pistol, and I could see he wanted me to read between the lines. He wanted the camera. And thank God he had a tattoo on his neck of the name of a gang that I recognized because I'd been in high school. A lot of the kids were bused from this area. And I just very nervously said, "Hey, I know your friends, Sergio and Puppet, and, I'm just here to shoot this little thing. I'm a student." And he just looked at me like I was like an alien had landed. And he just put the gun in his pocket and he just bicycled away. And there was probably 10, 20 people on the street. Nobody could care less. And that moment was just so raw. It was so visceral. My heart was thumping like, 150 beats a minute. And I just realized like nobody cared. And that was it. I just put the camera away, got in my car and just took off. And then that kid visited me about 13 years after that. I had some losses in my family due to health. And I was just going back to my like old, files. And then I saw that camera and I saw my USC box. And then boom, I said, whatever happened to that kid? And suddenly the idea was born. A boy on a bicycle with a gun in his backpack. Like, what could possibly go wrong? And using the gun is kind of like this prison, this thing that he's so obsessed with that becomes his best friend, and then he destroys it. And then all the elements of machismo and the militarization of young minds poured out. I wrote the script very fast, and it took many years to get made.
Well, I'm glad you made it because I think what I loved about this film, it was so real and it pulls you in right away. The way it's shot is very intimate. And of course, your casting is superb because they're just gems. I mean, that the young man who plays Freddy, I can't even tell you how brilliant this guy is. I mean, of course, you know how brilliant he is because he's in the film. So I really want to find out about those casting choices you made. Did you find him just a regular casting? I mean, there's somebody you had in mind before because everyone was on point.
Yeah, casting to me is everything. Hitchcock was right. It's well over 50% of the filmmaking process is, casting is. It's like alchemy. It's chemistry. It's all of the above. It's like that's such a magical, instinctive, intuitive process that you can't really ever know. And I think my masters like John Cassavetes and Elia Kazan and Robert Altman, Martin Scorsese, Spike, like these guys go to the streets. They go to the root, and so I needed a young man who was kind of a rebel without a cause, who had this broken heart, who had this deep need to prove himself. And the film I structured, first half is brainwashing, second half is regret as the road to conscience. So the rhythm of the film changes with the decisions he makes. And
Mm.
I edited the film according to performance, not according to shot reverse shot. So very European influence, which is where my family's from, Soviet Armenia and Middle East. So we have a different aesthetic mixed with an American aesthetic. I think that's what makes this country great, is when you integrate all these beautiful inspirations. But with Miguel, he was just introduced to me by one of my producing partners, and he was very young. He was in a very small role. And I just said, this is the next River Phoenix. Like, why aren't you guys putting him in a bigger role? I'm going to put him into the role. And so he was just gung-ho. He read the script. He was in the Dominican Republic shooting, and he did like a self-tape really quickly. And I said, self-tapes are great, reels are great, but I need to have the person-to-person relationship. Like, I'm old school. I don't cast according to, if you work with, Joaquin Phoenix or Robert, like, I don't care. Like, I care about your humanity first. I care about your humanity to inform your artistry, because it's so bloody hard making a movie. I just felt like he was a long lost kid brother who had so much potential. But I think I didn't want him to just be typecast as a Latino actor. Like, he has everything to be the next Oscar Isaac. He has everything to be the next Christian Bale. And so I said, I'm just going to invest all my passion and energy to make sure I really get him ready for this role, so we can just throw him off the cliff and grow wings and just really, really manifest. And my God, this movie does not exist without him. He's so brilliant. Miguel Angel Garcia. Miguel Angel Garcia.
He is so good, and the way it's shot and those moments with him, every moment with him was so intimate. And I was on his journey. There were times I couldn't look. I'm like, oh God, please, what's happening next?
Yeah.
I mean, and then the mom and of course Zorro, right?
Yeah. Solo. Yeah.
Right,
So.
Solo. I mean, he was brilliant. What I loved about this film, and I think you did such a great job, like you said, I think the layers of psychology behind it with each person, it was so deep, and we needed to see that. And I'm glad it brought that out, because we got invested in the characters that live in that environment, as not so much as the environment taking them over.
Thank you. You are the ideal spectator. Like, you've picked up on the nuances of the spice and the layers of the food, because great cinema to me is like, it's layered. It's meant to be savored. It's like a gourmet dish. It's not a quarter pounder with cheese. No disrespect to, fast food, but like, cinema is about really marbling. It's about really taking the time to cinematographically let the actor perform things that verbs cannot do justice to. Like, when he's crying in the bathroom after the incident, without giving any spoilers, or when you see the devastations. I used to be a photojournalist for many, many years. So there's no landscape in the world more important to me than the human face. Like, I could spend my entire life photographing the human face. And like, with the boyfriend in the doorway talking about the prayers and tears, and with all this. So what I wanted to do is go back to what the Italian neorealists did, and go to the streets and cast. But also, I needed to train non-actors who had never acted. The mom had never acted before, Berenice Valle. This was her first role. She was helping me cast the role. And then she told me, hey, this is my story. This is exactly what my life is. Can you just come to my house and see my son? Like, I have a Freddy at home. And so I felt like there was this raw pain that she could channel this into a therapy. And that basically became a period of like 7-8 months of training. Miguel would come to the backyard, and I'd train all the kids who I ended up casting, the Stanislavski system that my dad taught me, 30 years ago. And through that, we sculpted a film that is really about a young deer who thinks he's a wolf, but he learns a very terrible lesson about self-deception. And I think that's really the tragedy of our civilization, is that we just keep having holidays about people who shed blood, who go to wars, who are drafted in the war, like the Vietnam was, and then when they come back, their lives are devastated. But the idea of ideology, like, why is it that we're constantly expected to fight, to kill in order to be accepted or to win? And whether it's, and it's not about the trigger finger, this film. It's not a gang film. It's not a drug film. It's not a trigger finger film. It's about coming of age. It's about the rite of passage. And it's also about the battlefield between our ears, and not the trigger finger.
Credit to the writing, of course, because the actors were able to bring your words to life. I just love the tone, and I love the message, because there's so much regret we can make by choices we make and environments that we live in. So I think it's also a social film, with an impact socially. And I think that's a great message that we need to have in films. And I think that's what's powerful about it.
I think overall, I look at film not just as a mirror to society. I look at it more as kind of a self-reflective tool to not just heal yourself, but also to follow the muse. I think we give too much credit to reality, like, oh, is this realistic? And I think art and fiction and imagination and the soul and your dreams, like, where is your imagination? Is it here? Is it here? Is it here? But we know our heart is here. We know our eyes are here. Where's our soul? Where's the dream? Right? How do we justify, a character that I'd forgotten about for 13 years just crashing into me like a locomotive? And I'm like, oh my God, what happened to that kid? And then the muse comes in. And so fiction becomes a way to release ourselves. Fiction becomes a way of catharsis. And I felt like writing this, I wanted to really explore as honestly as I could, and respect every, Hugh Selby Jr., the New York writer who wrote The Last Exit to Brooklyn and Requiem for a Dream. He said something many years ago that I saw in an interview. He said, even the characters you hate writing, you have to write with love. Every human being at one point in time had this degree of innocence and unknowing and how the world shapes them. So Solo's character is I'm very protective of, because he was somebody who was a beauty in youth, and then he became a beast because of prison, as you see this backstory. But I wrote this as part of a trilogy. Hopefully I can explore the origin story of Freddy's dad and Solo one day in the 80s and 90s. And then the second part hopefully will be 10, 15 years after, when Freddy gets out of prison, hopefully.
I can't wait because Freddy has so much to offer and so
Yeah.
much more to say and so much more to grow. And I'd
Yes.
love to see that. And I really love, like you said, the choices of the faces. And I could see why the film is so powerful, because every single character had so much going on with their faces and how it was shot. It was really brilliant, and I'm just saying that because it was really brilliant.
Thank you so much for your passionate candor and your sincerity, because I really wanted to bridge professional actors like Corey Hardrict, who's brilliant, my brother, my real amazing brother, who's been so loyal and so supportive of the film, doing all the PR and the promo on the East Coast, going out there himself. Like, he really had my back, and I love him to death, and he's just a brother from another mother for life. But taking the idea of a professional trained actor and then training a non-actor is really the challenges I love, because magic happens when you take risk, and you have to take the risk very educated, because you have to be an alchemist. You have to really not force the actor to fit the page, but like a seamstress, you have to tailor make the role to fit the actor, and to understand their strengths and weaknesses and split the difference and work on the muscles. It's like a gym, some muscles are stronger than the other. And if you don't work those muscles, they tend to atrophy, or they tend to shrink. And so you have to, like, really, really see what the actor is really best at, and take that to the 19th, 20th level, and then be able to shape and really, really sculpt the characters and the performances with love, with trust, with a lot of dialogue, but also with humanity first. Like, I think that's the most important thing for me, is the humanity of my actors. That's why I love all of them. Every single one of them. We're like family. Like, I just really believe in that tradition of filmmaking where you have such honesty. And because of that trust, there is honesty. And especially the intimate scenes, with Miguel and Mariel Molinos, and the fantastic actress who plays Luna, the conscience of the story. I mean, her dedication, craft, her focus, her absolute all-in jump in. Like, this film wouldn't exist without that level of love from my actors. Like, they really hit it out of the park.
It's like making a soup, but you also had the right DP and the music. Everything was just the right mix in the soup that felt real. It's weird because it's a film, but then it's not a film. I don't know how to explain that. It's like I'm watching it, but then I'm so invested in it, and I'm so, like, feeling everything. I'm feeling the pain. I'm feeling the moments of falling in love. I mean, I don't know. It's so cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's the full orchestra of human emotions, because one minute they're, joking in bed, and then they're fighting like an old couple, and then she's throwing a CD at him. Like, it's the human comedy mixed with the drama, and with no margin for error. We were shooting 3-4 takes tops. Like, we didn't have time. We shot this film in 13 days, plus one day, one splinter day. It was like, I think altogether 116 scenes in 14 days, and we were SAG ultra low budget and Writers Guild ultra low budget, but it's like, it was just, I miscarried this film 4 times. We always came close to making it. It all fell apart. And we were supposed to shoot on March 12th, 2020, the day that the world stopped because of COVID. So that fell apart. Then going back to the drawing board, trying to find the money again. So by the time we came to shoot, I was like, it's Theseus and the Minotaur. I'm going to slay this beast. I don't care what I have to do. These 13, 14 days, it's gladiator school. And the amount of love and time the actors put into it, like that is the secret sauce. Because once you start rolling, you need time to play and you need time to experiment like a child, like David Lynch said, rest in peace, right? And you don't have that because you're ultra low budget. So you're just like a sniper, boom, 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 boom. You have to like shoot very fast. And I think being a photojournalist and being a former cinematographer, that was really important for me to have the ease to sculpt the performance with the production design, the music, which had a nice string score to it that underscores the anxiety and the beauty of youth, the messiness of it, that had such a control and a beautiful kind of warmth to it. So I'm just really proud of the boat scene in the river and all that, without giving away the spoilers.
Like I said, I feel like when you put elements like this together, it's such a powerful thing to do. And it also spells your creativity because people don't always see the creative process like how you're seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what makes this film so special. Understand that you tapped into all the elements that's needed to make us feel everything about this. And like I said, I have to say, I was like really, truly, I didn't know what to expect. And then I was, wait, this is really good.
I love it. Thank you so much. You have no idea what your sincerity means to me, because that's what you hope for, right? It's like, everything is so divided in this process of filmmaking, but all you're trying to do is create a unified symphony, a unified whole, have an emotion that a stranger across the world could feel and feel empathy for. Because I think that's what we really strive for as artists. It's about emotion. We care about ultimate, ulterior motives or agendas or visions or all this. Like, I really believe in perception, not vision. I think vision is surface. Vision is what you see like directly in front. Like, I care about the peripheries, the sides of the streets that you don't really see. And I think as a photographer, that's what you aim for, is the dark corners of life, of the human soul, of your own soul, that need light, because they need light in order for you to grow. And I needed to make this film as a catharsis for me, to deal with the past, to deal with all these losses, to deal with friends that had nothing to do with anything, who were just dreamers, who got cut down for absolutely nothing. And the story isn't for me. It's a cautionary story that I hope will be an inspiring one, because I want us to look at the worst manifestation of our problems. Because if we don't have these difficult conversations about these irreconcilable differences, how do we grow as a society? And so I think, again, it's about mindset. It's not about the trigger finger. The gang films and the war films and the good guys and bad guys will always be there. I don't care about that. I care about the soul. I care about what happens to a human being's soul when they make a mistake, but they're not a bad person.
Would love to see this film shown with youth in high schools, in places where we can make change. Because if one kid could leave the theater making a different choice, you've done what you're supposed to be doing.
You just quoted what Miguel says every other night when we're at the Q&A. Basically, that's exactly what we always say is, we screened the film for a group of moms who had lost children to gun violence about 2 years ago while I was finishing it. And basically the same cut. There's maybe 3 or 4 shots that were alternate. And it was the most heaviest screening I've had in my life. I've never felt more heavier. I've never felt more anxious, because not knowing what the reaction was going to be, but also respecting their pain and their dignity as moms who had lost, the most precious thing in their lives. And it was very emotional. And when the lights came on, this one mom who had lost her son, I think 6-7 months before, just came up to me and just bawled, and we hugged, and she just said, "I wish the boy that murdered my son would have seen your film the night before. Maybe he would have changed his mind." And to me, it just gutted me, it eviscerated me, but it was the word maybe. The fact that maybe cinema can do something to change a person's life for the better, and you'll never know about it, right? I think that's the beauty of art. When you listen to Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come," or the Beatles' "Yesterday," or any song that elevates you, they wrote that song, pouring their hearts out, but that's the most important thing they had to do. They didn't know what the consequences of it would be.
So I can only say congratulations. I'm so honored to chat with you, and really cannot wait to see the many more amazing social impactful films, but also human, heart, and soul. And
Yes.
yeah, God damn it, we need more filmmakers like yourself. Okay, so
Oh, bless you. You're very gracious. I cannot thank you enough for your warmth and your candor, and just you just strike me as a true cineast, and you're part of my tribe forever. So thank you for being so amazingly honest and just being so enthused about it. Like, that's really the point. Is I made this film as a pilot project. I created this thing called Integrating Cinema Communities, ICC, and this was the pilot project. And it's basically filmmaking as a driver for social change by bridging with academia and activism. So we have Homeboy Industries, Pico Youth and Family Center, Every Town for Gun Safety Fund, trying to build grassroots movements so that kids could not pick up the gun and pick up a movie camera. And so hopefully we can find more ways to make these movies continuously and be able to really use cinema as a driver for social change and really help at-risk youth learn how the power of narrative and how it can help them accept themselves and accept their world without having to fall victim to all the dark forces. At Die Like a Man Official on Instagram has all the details and information. We'll be updating it regularly. It will be available on VOD on Apple TV.